I'm Britton LaRue, and this is Moon to Moon. Moon to Moon is a space to consider, celebrate, and share the ways we come home to ourselves, anchor through change, and uncover our power. 1 month, one phase, one loving step at a time. Welcome back to Moon. This episode is quite special. Here I share with you my treasure, which is the human that is my boyfriend, and his name is Matt Bull. And we have a really beautiful conversation that I would like to get us to. So I'm going to challenge myself to be brief in this intro, even though I have a lot that I'd love to say. And I also have some anxiety around knowing that no intro could possibly say what I would like to say about this person or about this conversation or about what I'm learning from being in relationship with this person. So I'm just going to trust that this intro will be precisely as it needs to be to bring us to the conversation. I'm recording under a moon in Gemini. I'm right after the new moon. We are now in the eclipse window. And the conversation with Matt that you're about to hear happened right with the new moon and Taurus eclipse, right under the eclipse, and also as Venus and Jupiter were conjunct. So my intention for this introduction is to share with you Matt's bio as a way into a human. As you know, a bio can only say a sliver of someone, but it's a way in. And then we'll look at Matt's chart as a way in, and I'll share some details about Matt's chart that you can listen for as you receive Matt's voice and Matt's ideas and Matt's words in the conversation, for those of you studying astrology and interested in charts. And then I want to share with you my intentions for bringing Matt on the show, what I was hoping would unfold, even though per usual I had it super loose structure. That's how I like to roll here. But I want to talk with you about Taurus. I want to talk about the Hierophant, and I want to talk about the emergent no, which is a framework that feels especially zingy in spring and in Taurus season. I came into it last year at Taurus season. I announced it last year at the beginning of May here in Moon to Moon. And it's very present for many, many people in my community and many people in my personal life. And Matt is someone who really, really values my connection to my no, and I really value Matt's connection to his no. And so I do want to bring some of these things out before we get into the conversation. So let's go to the bio. Matt is a Clio-winning writer and creative director. And if you haven't heard of the Clios are like the Academy Awards of advertising. And he's co-founder of a small but acclaimed advertising agency called Kickstand. His work has been covered extensively, and he was once called an advertising folk hero of sorts, that's a quote, by Adweek. You might recognize his voice from either his side work as a voiceover artist for national brands, or from the viral video of him pranking his daughter. Google Mario Kart dad prank if you're curious, and I'll include a link for that. Matt is a dedicated father to 3 teenagers, and he is happiest when he is making something, whether it's a song, a poem, or a piece of furniture. So let's look at Matt's chart. Thank you, Matt, for giving me permission to share. So most of you know that I like to begin by talking about the rising sign. Oh, and let me just say that many listeners of this show are students of mine, or clients who are really into astrology. And I give this section here to those of you who love charts and are learning about charts and are interested in tuning into what different placements come through, like through someone's storytelling and through their voice and through their experiences. For those of you listening who are new to astrology or who don't know much about charts and chart readings and placements, I invite you to just let this section kind of wash over you and trust that actually some things will stick. And don't worry about trying to like keep up with it or get your head around it and make it frustrating. And so let me get into the chart then. I like to begin with the rising sign, and Matt is a Sag rising. Matt is a Sagittarius rising, and notably, Matt is also a Neptune rising. Matt has Neptune right at his ascendant point, and his north node is in the first house in Sagittarius. So, for those of you looking to connect that already to the bio that I just read, I think that one could make some connections around being in advertising, and advertising being like having something to do with projection and media and screens and fantasy. And Matt having a particular gift at attunement for how to frame things, to cultivate desire and cast spells. And also Matt's voice being part of that, like literally, because Matt has a side gig as a voiceover actor. So his voice goes over media waves and reaches people and like lights something up inside of them. At Neptune being related to collective, you know, collective fantasy can be a way of thinking about Neptune. And like with all placements, many, many other readings are possible. So I'm throwing that in. I think Neptune on his ascendant is a really important part of Matt. And I'm only speaking to like the most general kind of public way of understanding that. So Matt's Jupiter then, the ruler of his chart, because Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius. We look then to where is the chart ruler, and Matt's chart ruler, Jupiter, is in Aries in his 5th house of creativity. Notably, it's at 0 Aries, at that like really sparkling 0 degree when a planet just moves into a new sign. And Matt is an extremely creative person. As he shares in his bio, he's most happy when he's creating something. Just a wildly creative human being. And it's like a very impactful aspect of being around Matt, is just feeling that. Matt is a very Jupiterian person. And you can feel into that in this conversation. Not only is Jupiter Matt's chart ruler, but Jupiter is the ruler of his Sun and Mercury, because Matt is a Pisces Sun and Pisces Mercury. Matt has his Pisces Sun at the very last degree of Pisces, at 29 of Pisces, right on his IC, right at the bottom of his chart. And you may be already figuring out that means he's also a Sun-Jupiter conjunction native, because Pisces leads right into Aries. So Sun at 29 Pisces is conjunct Jupiter at 0 Aries. So within 24 hours or so of Matt's birth, the Sun was going to be exactly conjunct Jupiter. So Matt has this really expansive energy, this really expansive quality of being around. It's very expansive to be with Matt. Conversations are expansive. The energy feels expansive. Possibilities feel very expansive. Creativity feels expansive. And having never, for me, been with a Pisces romantically, as a Pisces, and having a lot of Piscean planets, it's been really incredible to be kind of like merged into that Jupiterian Pisces zone, and with someone that I'm deeply in relationship with. So it's lovely to be with a Pisces. So one of the most powerful aspects, well, there's many powerful aspects of Matt's chart, but when you're first meeting Matt, you feel that bigness of the Sag, of the rising, and also you're immediately captivated by Matt's Gemini Moon, opposite the rising sign, so Moon in the 7th house of one-on-one connections. That Gemini Moon, Matt is such a wordsmith. Like, Matt's facility with language, his ability to know about so many things, super duper duper multidisciplinary person, magical with language. And those of you who know me know that I really love language too, right? My Jupiter in Gemini is very forward in my work out in the world. And so being with Matt is extremely fun for me, because that Gemini quality of constant stimulating conversation, pop, pop, pop with words, just his ability to find the word and just the right word, the way of describing things, the nuances, his abilities with language, it just drives me crazy in just the best ways. I go nuts. It's so fun for me to engage with Matt at this air level. This airplane with Matt is very strong, and it also comes through because Matt has Mars in Aquarius, in the 3rd house of communication, of mental processes, of how your brain works, of how you use language. So between the Gemini Moon and Matt's Mars in Aquarius, this is someone who lands words. So it makes sense that he would become so successful as a copywriter, as a word person. He's paid to create words for people. And he also creates words for himself as a creator of his own writing. He creates songs. That to me feels like bringing in the Sag big time. Bringing in the fire that Matt has between the Sag and the Aries to the Mars-Moon connection between Gemini and Aquarius. Matt is a maker of language through both the written word and through song. And to me, he's a bard. And it's just delicious to be the audience and the receiver of so much of his bard genius. Yeah, I just praise. So Matt's fire comes through really strong. It was interesting, we were talking about it recently. He didn't feel the fire in himself. And this is something that comes up a lot in my community, is like kind of like they're feeling like a gap between oneself and one's fire. It can take a while to become aware of one's fire because we are in our own energy. It's really about being in the spirit of our energy. And that spirit that the Sag Rising has, I see this in my daughter who's Sag Rising, other people I know who are Sag Rising. There's this such a spiritedness to that buoyant Jupiterian fire that is infectious and fun and playful and like a ride. It's a ride. And Matt's ability to then take that fire and lower it, right? Because fire's way up high elementally. So through air, we can lower our fire to language and like make what is pre-language, which is the energetics of the spirit of fire, and put words on it so you can actually describe for someone, communicate for someone what you're feeling or what's animating you. That's where we have bard. That's what the bard does, you know, like that's what the musician songwriter does. That's what the poet does. And that's what a copywriter does. That is what a wordsmith does. A word maker, a word witch, a magician. It's like Mercury taking that fire and putting language on it. So good. But as I shared, Matt, this kind of comes forward the longer you know him, that Piscean fourth house, that deep Piscean sun, 29th degree of Pisces. As you know, that's a very powerful degree because it's the very end of the 12th sign, where 12 goes back to 1 again. And that 1 of Aries is where his Jupiter is, right? So that he has this wild placement of that Sun Jupiter at 29 Pisces, 0 Aries. And that Pisces in him is so old and so wise. It's like this ancient, emotionally tapped in part of self. And it's a really beautiful play opposite the 0 placement of his Jupiter, which is super playful, and his other 0 placement, which is one of my favorite parts about Matt's chart, the great, great gift of Matt being a Venus in Taurus. Venus and Taurus in the 6th house of work, living in a body, holistic health. Matt's Venus in Taurus is where Matt's earth comes in. Matt is a cook. Matt is a maker of food. Oh my goodness. It is such a privilege to be the receiver of the food that Matt Bulk makes. Matt is adorable with his Taurus because it's, a fixed sign, super fixed, right? Taurus, the bull, Matt Bull. Because Matt has so many stances about food and like so many opinions about food. Takes food extremely seriously. The only person I've ever met who takes food at the seriousness level of Matt Bull is my brother, Rhett LaRue, who is a multi-fixed Aquarian who also has really strong opinions and is so fun to eat with because of it. So Matt has taught me to really care about coffee and to get into it. And it's been a treat. It's been a treat to get opinionated, which is something that my mutability kind of resists. And see the pleasure in being more specific about my opinions. So everyone with a Venus in a fixed sign, this may relate to you. You may relate to this too, is like having a Venus that like really cares about having opinions, like having stances about what you find pleasurable and what bothers you. Matt is also so beautifully dedicated to his wellness. Like, this is a man who every morning like does the neti pot to clear out his nose and like does not miss his runs on Wednesdays and Sundays and like does not miss his resistance training. When he's got something off balance, like his shoulder's hurting, he does his exercises thoroughly. You know, I mean, this is a Venus to me in the 6th house of just like the pleasure of showing up to the routine and taking care of yourself. And because it's Taurus, it's like so body, food, aesthetics. Like Matt loves setting up his space and making it beautiful. He's good with plants, you know, like his space is so beautiful. He just puts everything like just where he wants it to please him. He's a stylish man. He is a stylish man. And it's just delightful to be in that energy. And this is a well-rounded elemental human being. And I love how the chart can illuminate that. What hasn't been said about the chart? What I haven't shared is, Matt's my generation, so Pluto in Libra, Uranus in Scorpio, Neptune in Sag. Matt has Saturn in Cancer in the 8th house. Saturn in Cancer in the 8th house. And I feel like this is the part of Matt's story that is what we're going to be talking about. Probably none of these other things that I've just shared about Matt's chart are as important to the conversation as Saturn and Cancer. I don't even really want to say any more about that. I'm just going to drop that there for the Astro student. Saturn in the 8th house in Cancer. So, thank you, Matt, for letting us talk about your chart, letting me look at it, letting me sing to it a little bit. You have such a beautiful chart. So, one of the reasons that I wanted Matt to come on here and talk is because I had been wanting to talk about the Hierophant for Taurus season, because in the tarot, we associate the sign of Taurus with the card, the Hierophant. And listeners know it's an important card for me, which I'll explain in a minute. And it's also a card that, for me, resonates with a lot of the life experiences that Matt has had and works through, and those are the things that we talk about in our conversation. So without getting into what we'll talk about, let me just say a little bit about the Hierophant then. So the Hierophant is card number 5. And usually the Hierophant is depicted as some kind of religious leader or spiritual teacher. Often you see a figure with keys or a key. Often there's a book of some kind with like symbolic or hieroglyphic language, like the word. Often there are listeners that are receiving the language of the teacher. So the Hierophant has something to do with teacher, with a leader of words, of someone who speaks codes, who is trained to share words. And we all have the Hierophant in us. It has to do with the ways that we have been conditioned to share wisdom. The Hierophant has something to do with the lineages of what we say. Like, what are the sources? Like, what are the sources of the words that we say? The beliefs that we have? The systems for knowing, for the philosophies? The meaning making that moves through our throats. Taurus rules the throat and the vocal cords. It is through throat that we feel into living by word, like making our words mean something about who we are. And a lot of us have a lot of deconditioning and deprogramming to do around this stuff. Like as children, as adolescents, as young people, we trust the teachers and we get good at parroting or mimicking or repeating back what we've been told to say, or we've been told is righteous to say, or we've been told is like a plottable language. And when we were moving through Hierophant experiences, what I've found is we're learning how to take our throats back. We're learning to like feel into the tenderness of like, I don't think I like what I was taught to be true. That is true. I don't know that that is true for me. Why do I believe that? Why do I just accept this thing? What do I know is true? And the Hierophant is like finding your own wisdom keeper inside of yourself, coming to your own personal gnosis, Gnosis, I think it's spelled. Gnosis meaning wisdom. And Hierophant channeling is coming to like get really embodied with one's words so that we're not just mimicking and like just taking the words that are given to us without questioning them. How do you feel good about what you say? Why am I saying this? Like, why is this coming out of my mouth? You know? And really getting, it's like a process of becoming more integrated with language so that your speech is coming from like the most you place that you're in access to. So then it gets even deeper. Like it's about accessing who you are, right? Like the Hierophant is some really deep stuff. It's my life card. If you add up all the digits of your birthday, so I'm March 4th, 1978, so it's just like 3 plus 4 plus 1 plus 9 plus 7 plus 8 equals 32. 3 plus 2 is 5. The major arcana go up to 21. So anything over than 21, you would just break it down, and then you can find out the number of the associated card for your life card. For me, my deprogramming with the Hierophant has been primarily about academia and unlearning from hierarchical ways of thinking about knowledge and expertise and like degrees and certifications, and shifting into teacher as sharer of personal experience. And just like I'm just in constant unlearning about what teacher is as I deprogram, and evolving how I want to show up to the spaces where I'm quote unquote teacher, you know? Big card for me. Matt's experience of the Hierophant across his life has had much more to do with religion. And so we'll get into that. But the Hierophant definitely is a powerful energy that is in moon to moon as it comes from me and as I work through how I speak. Moon to moon is like where I practice showing up, moving words through my throat, like in an ever ongoing desire to get more connected to presence and authenticity. And a connection to who I feel myself to be. So everyone who listens is a witness to my process. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So it's Hierophant season, and it's also emergent no season. So you may have been following me on Instagram where I've been talking about this, and the emergent no has to do with a no. It's emergent because it has been concealed from your consciousness. So when something is emergent, you know I love this word, I'm emergence astrology. When something is emergent, it's rising forth from concealment. So the idea of the emergent no is like there being a no that's sort of underground that we become conscious of. And for me, I feel, and I share this recently in IG Live, that it becomes conscious to us because we're ready for it to become conscious. We're ready to be able to receive this no and act on it, where previously we may have had very good reasons why it was important to not be conscious of our no. Like we needed to stay in the situation that we were in. We needed to be working on something else and not working on extricating ourselves from whatever we were in, whether it's a relationship, a job, a place, a habit, a way of framing the world, a way of framing ourselves. Those are all like bigger emergent no's that like people can be in a no marriage for decades before they're able to see the no. You know, we do things a really long time when it's really a no for us, but we can't see that because there's other reasons at play why we can't, you know? So the timing of emergent no to me is quite sacred thing. It's like, for me, it feels like the universe reveals what we're ready to see. And the timing is perfect. The timing is perfect. So there's really no need to feel like shame or disappointment that we didn't see it earlier, you know? This is the journey we're on. So when I created the Emergent No framework a year ago, you may remember this, I put the episode out on May 7th. I was just coming out of a huge breakup. And emergent no came for me as I realized the intensity, really the horror of that no. Because a huge part of me was not interested in it being a no. I did not want it to be a no, That's the hard thing about emergent no sometimes is a big part of us can be very invested in it not being a no, we put in a lot of time. It maybe used to be beautiful. It's now a no, we maybe it was the biggest treasure of our lives, that job, that situation, that whatever. And so when we realize it's a no, it's uncomfortable. It's sad. It's full of grief. Even if there is also, and on the other hand, exhilaration, excitement, hope, trust. We need both of them to get through the no. And so I created the emergent no in despair, quite angry with it. Even as I'm just laying so much trust, on my knees, just universe, I'm trusting that this no is what needs to happen. My body seems to say it is. How can this be? I'm trusting. It's a lot of working with Venus. This is Taurus season, Venus is the ruler. So much work with Venus last year, this time, just Venus, help me trust. You may have heard me last summer working with Venus where I talked about my realization that I did not trust that I could find a cis straight white man, a cis straight man, cis straight, cis bi any man. Are there people with a penis? That will give me what I want. What do I want? And so I began petitioning to penis. Yeah, I did. Petitioning to Venus. All right, I don't want these things. I don't want to deal with this, And trusting. Gosh, there's just so much trust that's required with these emergent no's. So, in came Matt at a time when I was deep in that work. I was very, very, very startled by meeting him. Really hard for me to believe that he was real and not a figment of my imagination. It's taken a lot of time for me to fully receive this gift that is him. And one of the things that he most loves about me is the way I've taken care of myself with my no over the years through many examples, not just that one. He feels safe with me knowing that I will give him my no if there's a no to give. Him being a super Piscean empathic person with Moon in the 7th house too, Moon in the 7th house people know you're super, super attuned to what the other person wants and needs. And it can be hard to not feel responsible in some way for helping people with that. Moon and 7th house people. I see this regularly. And so for him, that it feels very soothing and helpful to be with someone that he can trust is going to take care of themselves, so that he doesn't have to go into that space where then he starts giving himself away, right? So came the phrasing then, ultimately, abundance begins with no, which I've been sharing on Instagram. Abundance begins with no. Because like the waves of abundance that come every single time I compost something, it's just wild, and it takes me a while to even receive, because I'm just like in disbelief and shock. Like, what? The bounty. And really, this is Matt's story too. And so much of what we're talking about in this conversation, which we're calling coincidence as a practice, is really about trusting in no, and then also trusting in yes. Because Matt's story of deconditioning and reprogramming and getting closer and closer to what he calls his mystical middle age, which is so great. Like, let's start a membership community called Mystical Middle Age. But Matt's story is so much about like the horror of you realizing your no in many different instances across his life. Just like it's a crisis when you realize you're a no on, say, your religious belief system. Like, that is a huge overhaul. And you know, he's in these stages of more and more bounty coming back to him from the spiritual field, from the mystery field, from really, you know, saying no to one Hierophant and looking for it within himself, and learning to trust himself as source of Hierophant, and having the capacity, having the intuition to trust himself that he can discern the difference between a Hierophant teaching that feels nourishing and free and open and expansive, and one that feels limiting and toxic. I feel ready now to share with you the conversation. So excited. It's so cute. It's so rich. It's playful and also profound. I give to you my conversation with my treasure, Matt Bull. Okay.
Clap.
You do it. You're better. You have a good clap.
Thank you.
Welcome to Moon, Matt Bull.
Thank you. Britton LaRue, good to be here.
So before we get into what we'll be discussing as a way in, I would like to share how we met and became connected.
All right. Sounds good.
So I met you for the first time in 2000, the year I graduated from college. I had just moved back to Dallas. I did not want to live in Dallas, but I wasn't sure what to do after college. And my mom was like, you need to come home and regroup. And I had been studying a lot about advertising and marketing my senior year. Especially I was studying the rhetoric of the media. Basically, that was like the area that I studied in communication studies. And so I was doing a lot of studying advertising. And so I thought maybe I wanted to be in advertising. And so after college, when I moved home, I found out that the Richards Group here in Dallas, which is a large, independently owned ad agency, maybe one of the most powerful, would you say,
I think it's
in the city?
It's it's the biggest in the city. It's the biggest independent agency in the country, or it was before their implosion a couple years ago. But that's a whole other story.
Yes, it is. Yes, so I saw that the Richards Group was hiring for account execs. And I was like, I'm probably an account exec. I'm organized. I get things done. This is like my Moon and Capricorn self that was like, yeah, I'm not a creative. I'm not creative, I told myself. I'm somebody that helps creatives. And so I applied, and it turned out the person interviewing me went to Northwestern. So that was a nice in the interview, got the job. And on one of the accounts that I worked on, you were the copywriter.
That is correct. Yep.
That was...
Yes, and you got out of advertising, and I'm still in it. So I have tried to extract myself from this business for a long time.
Dear listeners, it took about 1 month, maybe less, maybe 1 week, for me to realize that I would love to study advertising and study like its effects on our psyches and study how it changes how we feel about ourselves and changes our perceptions of realities. But like helping run ads through from start to finish and keep people organized is just absolutely not what I'm supposed to do. So, I didn't stay there. I stayed there maybe 8 months, but you were on my team and we didn't talk much, but I was very taken with you because you were a very creative person. And I loved observing you and witnessing you and your genius.
That's a very sweet thing to say.
So, I think we only spoke once or twice.
Yeah.
We may get to that story.
I mean, should you want me to tell it now, or are you holding it?
Because here it is. Last summer, I woke up to a DM from you asking if I was the same Britton LaRue as the one who worked at the Richards Group all those years ago. And my answer is yes, because...
Oh, goodness. I had been thinking of having my chart read for a while, and I could talk about why that was in a bit. But the background of why I reached out to you was back in those Richards Group days. I hired a friend of mine to direct a commercial for the account that we were on. And that friend became obsessed with you. He met you once, and he would ask about you every time I saw him. And he has gone on to become like a big Hollywood director. And still, when I talk about him, when I talk to him, he asks about you. This last time I talked to him was the first time I have been single since his obsession with you, and he's long since been married, so it's just a playful obsession. But I was talking to him about dating, and he was like, you should see what happened to Britton LaRue. So I looked you up, and you were an astrologer, and I was like, that's interesting. I've been looking for somebody to read my chart. Maybe I should reach out to her. So I did originally DM you for purely professional astrological reasons. At first, it was not some scheme, even though my buddy was hoping it would go the way that it turned out it went.
I don't know that, have I asked you, did you look much into like my way of talking about astrology or like stances or was it just really like, I want an astrology reading?
So it was two things. One, it was, I knew I wanted an astrology reading, and I wanted an astrology I wanted the connection to feel a little bit wildly coincidental, and I kept like considering booking people, and I was like, I don't really have a connection to this person. I want there to be. I've learned to trust coincidence in my mystical middle age, and and so the fact that I had this old friend that could never get you out of his head, and that led to this sort of astrology connection, was enough of a coincidence to make it be like, oh, maybe I should follow this lead. And then the other thing is just I grew up in a lot of toxic certainty, and I've engaged with some astrology that has some of that same, like, I don't know how to describe it. Like, some people approach astrology with this sort of like engineering, like this does this and this does this, and I don't vibe with that. And your approach, like I feel like one of the beautiful things about everything you do is there's this sense of comfort with uncertainty, and there's this mix of like academic brilliance, but this sort of playful, open, literary, interpretive layer that I need to engage with anything spiritual, and I think that's kind of rare in a lot of spiritual circles. So that's one of the things I love most about you. I don't know how much of that I picked up immediately, but
maybe the coincidence led first.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I sensed a bit of that, but it flowered kind of profoundly the more I got to know.
I feel like as soon as we started going back and forth, we hadn't set a reading date yet before we were like finding 1 million synchronicities.
Yeah.
And it was just like head explosions. How is this happening?
Some of which are still ridiculous sounding to me in retro. I mean, that like, not even in a metaphorical, poetic sense, the moon like literally led both of us out of our marriages. Like, it was, or at least that's how I say it. The moon, the quarter moon, a particular quarter moon, gave me the courage to end an unhealthy, unconstructive 21-year relationship. And I don't remember the language you used around your moon experience that led you, gave you a similar kind of push, but it felt very, very
It was synchronous. A full moon, and I don't think I've ever felt it worded that way. I think you've said that to me before, but the way you just said it kind of is blowing my mind a little bit.
So
Thank you, Moon.
Yeah. I'm not misspeaking. Is that ringing?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever voiced that when I wrote The Moon Started Talking to Me in Moon to Moon. Mm-hmm. A big thing that the moon was saying was, it was a large wake up to your life.
Yeah.
Talking to me, and the aspect of me being invited to see that my divorce was like, my marriage was not a thriving space anymore.
Yeah.
Became a component of like a larger invitation from the moon. And that's probably, would you say that's true for you too?
Oh, yeah,
it was part
absolutely.
of a larger, ultimately.
Yeah.
It felt like maybe that was the first step, that was the obvious thing, and then in hindsight, it was part of catalyzing all kinds of things.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, no question.
I also was struck by how the way that you just were speaking about what you like about me, and you use literary like as a counter to certainty. Mm-hmm. I hadn't really ever thought about literary as a space for uncertainty.
Oh yeah.
I like that.
I was a lit major, and coming from the hyper evangelical, this is what this text means, and therefore we behave this way, kind of like diet that I'd been fed since I was, 3 months old. It was actually hard for, like, I started as a science major. I went to school for biophysics, I told myself that I hated English and literature classes because of the kind of open-ended, like there's no answers and like everything's interpretation and it's all just, and everybody's intuition fighting against everybody else. And slowly, as I moved out of science as a intended career path, I kind of fell in love with my literature classes for exactly those reasons, and it became this sort of healthy, safe, even though I was very much still in the evangelical world. I didn't leave that behind until my mid-20s, but literature became this healthy space for me to practice and, like, I don't know, dance with uncertainty a little bit and interpretation and intuition, and so that's what I connect it to still.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about your no to your science major and your yes to being an English major as being a move towards uncertainty. Did you think of it that way at all at the time?
No, I don't think I did. And I should also, in defense of science, I should say that
Yeah.
science is one of the few institutions we have that is incredibly comfortable with uncertainty, and it's codified into the scientific method, and it's like literally the statistics of how studies work and certainty levels and confidence intervals. Like I love that about science, but it was at least a system that had answers and that was toward finding answers that part of my, certainty addicted brain was comfortable with. Whereas literature was just like every man for himself. Who's in charge here?
Who's in charge? So, and what you're saying then is that really both of them were providing a home for your embrace of uncertainty, whereas you had another part of you that was operating in deep certainty.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So maybe we should get into that.
Okay.
Like, what does it mean that to your, like, in the context of your upbringing, that you would desire an astrology reading?
Oh God, that's. I mean, the way I grew up, like, astrology was evil. Like, clearly, it just is this. There are things that you don't do. You don't sacrifice infants to Satan. You don't practice astrology. You don't have sex before marriage. You don't look at pornography. You don't cast spells. You don't look to the stars for guidance. Like, it just was like a clear no. This is bad. This is unsafe. There are clear biblical injunctions against it. Was what I was taught, and then nobody ever bothered to point out that the three magi that were the first to go recognize the divine inbreaking of the God of the universe into the world and infant Jesus were three magicians that used astrology to find him. But
Tell us. I love it when you have these stories.
So yeah, I like it. Just was astrology was just synonymous with evil, the way I grew up. And
do you want to? Can you share a little bit about more of your upbringing?
Sure. My dad was an ordained minister and a Christian counselor that, like, was known in some circles for performing exorcisms in his private counseling practice.
And did you know that that's what was happening?
He had really shitty professional boundaries. I knew way more about his private practice than I should have in retrospect. I'm very uncomfortable with some of the details I know about specific patients now that I look back. But
what were you told it was?
Demons possessed, like, patients that he also specialized in dissociative identity disorder back then. I think it was still called multiple personality disorder, but he had a lot of patients, and he was in the thick of the satanic panic of the 80s, where all of these, like, there was this phenomenon where mostly women, for whatever reason, were recovering these memories of childhood satanic ritual abuse at the hands of, like, these like vast cults that were just believed in my church's circles to just be everywhere and just part of the culture. And so my dad had these patients that would claim to have memories like this of being, taken as children out into places and, like forced into these ritualistic sacrificial blood ceremony things, and then as a result, according to what I was told and taught, they had like demonic attachments. And
Ooh, what's a demonic attachment?
So it would be a demon that becomes part of their physical body and has to be cast out by an exorcist. So
can a demonic attachment manipulate you?
According to the belief system I grew up with, yes. It can manipulate you. It can also take control of you and outright, and like you would dissociate, and the demon would be in control and go,
Did your younger self find all of that? Like, how did your younger self process that kind of? That's quite scary.
It was, so that's an interesting question. I haven't actually maybe talked about. I have had more fear around this topic as an adult that's not a part of that world anymore than I did as a child, because I was taught with certainty that because I had Jesus Christ as my personal savior who lived in my heart, I was infallibly protected from that whole world. There was nothing in that world that could hurt me. And so it was like this like very sci-fi, like it was this cool like sort of fantasy sci-fi world that I was a secret hero in this story, that I had this superpower that protected me. And I just like it was just a fun thing to learn about as a kid. Like it was exciting. Like that's the main memory I have.
So you weren't afraid of like, what if Jesus like doesn't want to be in my heart anymore, or what if I do something and Jesus is mad at me?
No, I know people that had different flavors of like Catholic friends that very much struggled with those questions. The flavor of Christianity I grew up with was like this magic prayer basic version of Christianity, where salvation was all you had to do to be saved was say this prayer that I probably can still recite by heart, but Jesus Christ, I know that I am sinful. I know that you died for my sin. I believe that you were God and the Son of God, and that I'm asking you to come live in my heart forever so that I may be saved. That's the end. That's all it takes. Like I can do. Now I'm very strongly discouraged from doing whatever I want from now on, but because I said that prayer, according to the faith I grew up with, I'm now permanently saved, and nothing can change that, and God won't ever change his mind.
Yes.
So that was very safe. That was the certainty that I grew up with.
I imagine it would make one want to tell everybody about it and get everyone on board, because it's like, you see?
It's so easy. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Everybody should do this, of course. That was the whole point of evangelism. Like, yeah, of course you have to tell people about this now. And I did that as a kid, like all the time. Like I drove my friends nuts. Like was constantly sharing the gospel with them.
Yes.
In the parlance of my faith.
Well, does this mean that you could have all desires?
What do you mean?
As long as you said the prayer, like you could act on any desire that you had? Or?
Well, so the tricky part there was they would say that like if you looked at somebody's life and they weren't behaving like a Christian is supposed to behave, it's a sign that maybe they didn't mean it when they said the prayer. Mm-hmm. And then it wouldn't count. Mm-hmm. So you kind of had to you had to take the whole thing and like not drink and not I was very anti-alcohol culture growing up, even though Jesus' first miracle was turning water into wine after the party got so rowdy that they ran out of wine.
Yay, Jesus.
Yeah. But, yeah, it was a pretty stringent, like, you had to prove that you were safe, not to God, but to people around you. Like, you didn't want them to think that you didn't mean it when you said the magic prayer.
Yes. And so, and your mom was?
Oh, yeah, my mom grew up Catholic, and in Wisconsin, and when she was 13, she's super religious, as a Catholic too, decided to join a convent to become a nun, spent a couple of years in the convent at age 13 to 15, I think, and then decided the nuns weren't serious enough about God for her taste, so she quit. And then it wasn't until college she joined a evangelical organization called Campus Crusade for Christ that she found kind of the level of intensity that she was looking for in a religious setting, and converted to evangelical Christianity, and that's the group she met my dad in. So, yeah, it was full speed ahead, very very sincerely held beliefs, and she's still very much a part of that world. My dad no longer is, but.
So, the astute listener can tell that you are no longer a practicing evangelical Christian. So, I'd love for you to share some of your journey of like, like, how does it, like, the purpose of certainty is to stay inside of certainty, right? Like, it's all designed so that you don't start asking questions.
Yeah.
Because if you start asking questions, then everything starts to become wobbly.
Mm-hmm. And it's harder for power structures to maintain control.
So, I mean, I have to wonder if your love and engagement with science and with literature may have been a way of kind of begin practicing uncertainty in like such a large percentage of your life that it moved in, or would you say that you don't connect those at all?
No, I don't think I've ever connected those until now, but now that we're talking about it, I very much see those things as vital and alive. Like, I didn't learn. I fell in love with uncertainty eventually, even though I miss certainty, because certainty is
it's amazing.
It's fucking amazing. Yeah, it's so really nice to just know for sure something. You know? It's not a feeling you get to have anymore all that often. But yes, I still have just this very subconscious, very ingrained, compulsive attraction to certainty that I have to be. I mean, my brain's a little bit warped around it just from my upbringing. I have a very judgmental inner child that I'm actively working with, but I know it's going to be a lifelong struggle, and to counter it, part of my healing has just been to see it and name it, and then to cultivate a kind of love affair with uncertainty and with the preposterous, and I think that's where astrology kind of re-entered the picture. Well, not re-entered, but where I kind of was drawn to it in the last few years, as it became sort of a symbol of the preposterous in an exciting way.
Say more on that.
Yeah. So, as a science kid, I mean, I was even after I dropped the physics major, was deeply taken with science, and would just read journal articles daily. I'd stayed interested in the business of science and how it was done, and biology and physics and astronomy, and I was an amateur astronomer, and loved stargazing, and that was sort of overlapping that phase with my slow extrication from religious fundamentalism, and
timing wise, this is over your 20s.
Yeah,
would you say
mid to late 20s was when maintain like the level of mental gymnastics it took to kind of soothe the cognitive dissonance inherent in evangelical certainty. It just became too much, and I realized it was not a healthy space for me to stay in, and
I have to know more. Is that, would you say that was like a crisis moment, or was it like a series of like a portal opening, just more and more and more of like, I think this is a no for me?
That's a very good question. It was, the no for evangelicalism was, it was an emergent no, to use your language,
if you will,
seasonal language, but it was condensed probably to like, I don't know, a year or two, where I happened to get obsessed with Scientology. Like from a distance, I was like reading about L. Ron Hubbard and how he it's biographers that the Church of Scientology have tried to stifle, but have letters where he had created Dianetics. Dianetics was started fizzling out, and he wrote to a friend that he needed to start a religion because that's where all the money is in religion. So he created this incredibly abusive, controlling religious structure just to make money. And like, you pay for the levels of enlightenment, and you go through, and then there's a Sea Org that you can join, which is like the Navy SEALs of Scientology. I took a picture with some once on the street in LA. When I saw them, I got all of this like Sea Org members. There they are. But you make a $1 billion contract to L. Ron Hubbard, and you've committed to like all your future reincarnations coming back to fulfill his. Anyway, that the awareness that there were people so bent on control and domination that they would invent a belief system to perpetuate their own control. Like, I hadn't encountered that idea before, and it started to slowly erode kind of the trust that I had in the power structures that I'd grown up with. And then 9/11 happened in 2001, and to me that became the symbol of what certainty, writ large certainty, like followed through to its total fulfillment looks like. And it's the willingness to die for something clearly wrong. And those, ashamed's not the right word. I think I was at the time ashamed that it took sort of outsider faiths for me to look down on in judgment before I was able to look down in judgment on my own belief system. But that is what it took. And
well, you're in kind of a fishbowl when you're in it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to think rationally about, the water that you're swimming in. So, so those were the two factors that I just couldn't. I couldn't convince myself that what I thought I believed anymore after confronted with those two things. But then I swung pretty hard to the other side of certainty, and just became a very strict rationalist, and got even deeper into science, and that's probably like, if you talk about astrology in my life in phases, astrology at the time became this symbol for lazy thinking, for like, oh gosh, how do I explain it? Like putting, choosing to believe something that can't be true to make yourself feel better about your place in the universe was probably how I would have talked about it at the time. I remember really like looking down at people into astrology and feeling superior and being like, look, we know we can quantify the force of gravity. We know that, you know, this cup on the table has more of an influence on you than, you know, a planet, you know, however many astral units away from you does. Like, we can measure that. Like, there's not anything ambiguous about here. There's no opening for these planets to be having any kind of influence on you. And so that was kind of the space I lived in for a long time until the preposterous sort of chose me.
Yes. For the Sag Rising Pisces, like, how long can you really stay a rationalist? So, okay, a lot of I've had a lot of clients tell me that they resonate with like what I used to feel from what I would call like the like invalidation energy, which is, you don't really believe in that, do you? Kind of like what you were just describing.
Right, exactly.
So, like, how did you shift then to this third way?
I just started letting myself be open to weird things. Started happening to me.
Okay, let's talk about weird things.
And the more I opened myself to allowing weird things to happen to me, the more they happened, and the more important I felt, and the more they defied any reasonable explanation, and the more that kind of felt like the point, you know, like here is something outside of what can be defended rationally or quantified or explained, or and some of the most like profound things that I've encountered are now fit in that category, and not the least of which is the way the moon has spoken to both of us. But I mean, I don't like, this could be 2 hours of me like storytelling around weird shit that's happened, but
sounds so fun.
I mean, I saw a UFO.
I'm hoping that you will describe how you have not only seen one UFO, but multiple.
Yeah. So this was in my amateur astronomy phase. There was a comet that had just become naked eye visible in 2007. It was called 17P Holmes. And I was really excited to try to find it one particular night. And I was coming out of Central Market. I picked up dinner for the family, and I stopped to look up at the sky, and there were too many street lights. I couldn't make anything out in the sky, but I heard, I didn't used to tell this part of the story because it's too ridiculous, like it makes it sound like absolute bullshit, but I literally overheard myself think, I'm going to see a UFO tonight. And as I like heard this intrusive thought in my head, I was like, what the fuck was that? I'm not into UFOs. I'm not that guy. I just brushed it off. I didn't think about it. And I drove home, and I'm in my backyard, and it was very dark. I think it was around new moon season. And I like set these grocery bags down, and I found the constellation Perseus that the comet was supposed to be in, and I just slowly let my eyes adjust to the light, and I see a little wisp, like cloud-like looking thing, and just off of Perseus, and I'm like, I think that's it. I'm like, and as I'm all excited about this comet, something catches my eye, and I look up, and there is this almost invisible, very large thing with no trailing lights, no running lights, shaped like a keyboard brace, like a whale's tail, kind of like just gliding over my backyard, dead silent, assuming it's the same size as an airplane. Planes have flown over my yard at that altitude before, and they're like deafeningly loud. This thing was dead silent, and it just glided over the tree tops for about 30 seconds and was gone. Can I imagine terrestrial explanations for this? Of course. But what it did was it set me off on this path of exploring the unknown and being open to the unknown in a way that I became obsessed with not just UFOs, unexplained things, but also just with the possibility that the world is much, much stranger and less explicable than we were led to believe. So I guess that was kind of an emergent yes moment for me. It was a slow building of opening myself to nonsense, to healing and important, nourishing nonsense. And astrology, what I've learned since, I gave a very short, very silly talk on this once years ago, but that the foundations of Western rationalism are full of these kinds of moments of preposterous, inexplicable, mystical wonder. I mean, going back to Descartes, you could argue that Descartes is the father of Western rationalism. But he was a traveling soldier for hire before he was a philosopher, and there was a night that set him on the path of philosophy, and he was somewhere in Switzerland, I think, and he was trying to sleep and he couldn't. He was sitting in a chair in this rented room, and he had a series of dreams, and it's called this night is called Descartes' Olympica, I think, if I remember right. But he had this one. He woke up from this dream of being chased by a demon through a city and going and hiding, taking comfort in the church and escaping from this demon. So he wakes up. He thinks about this. Goes to sleep. Then he wakes up again, and this one is more of a vision than a dream. The second one, he wakes up and he swears that the room is filled with these glowing lights all around him. He just he sees these will-o'-the-wisp things that are just around him in this room, and then and they have some, I don't remember, he described the sound they made, and then he went back to sleep, and he had a third dream, and the third dream was he was visited by, I don't remember what, in my head it's like the angel of truth or something like that. I don't remember, but what he called it, but he was shown two books, and one was a book of poetry, and one was a dictionary, and he was told that he had to choose the fate of the world. I may be exaggerating the language in this part for storytelling effect, but the details are
exaggerating,
more or less, yeah. But he chose the dictionary, and he it was this moment that he would later say was the foundation of his agenda to create this sort of rigorous, rational, method-based approach to understanding the world that became this very important but very also limiting framework that our culture has been a part of ever since. And so I just think it's fascinating that this mystical knight is behind this anti-mystical culture that we're now all a part of, and that I think more and more people are trying to correct and find a third way through.
I love this this idea of the third way, that beginning with the certainty and then moving into rationalism and then opening up to the preposterous. And the gravity story.
Yes, so that back to astrology. So Isaac Newton, this is another one of these wild, like, it's almost like a collaboration between the rational and the anti-rational. But so this thing that I was convinced, gravity, this like thing that we know exactly how it works, and we know that it gets profoundly weak the further out you go, through the inverse square law that Newton found. The origins of his interest in this are wild. Like, so it's common knowledge that Newton was obsessed with occult topics and esotericism, and was part of secret societies, and he was into alchemy, and all early astronomers were also astrologers because there wasn't a clear distinction in those days, and it was hard to make money at like scientific astronomy, and so all the astronomers would work for royalty and create horoscopes and custom charts for kings and queens, and Newton was no different. But what was different was that I guess I should talk about the scientific context. So Newton's discovery of gravity was probably the biggest consciousness shift in Western history, in the sense that before Newton, before his publication of the Principia Mathematica in 1680 something, this domain of Earth and the domain of the heavens were very different, very distinct. There was a clear line. There was Earth, and there was the laws and the rules and the scientific observation that applied to us, and then there was the heavens where the celestial bodies were, and they, hundreds of years of astronomers like Kepler and Copernicus had done all of this incredible work to chart the exact paths and the exact shapes of the ellipses that the planets carved on their orbits around the sun. But it was a clearly different world than the Earth out there, and those shapes and those ellipses and around the sun had nothing to do with us. What Newton did that changed the world immediately was when he discovered the inverse square law that describes gravity, he showed that the force that traces those ellipses in the stars is the same fucking force that holds ordinary old us, holds our feet to the dirt like that. And that was absolutely mind-blowing. Like that was not something the world expected or was prepared for. And it changed how everyone thought about everything. Like there has not been a bigger, like the only thing that would compare in terms of like a radical upending of what we believed about ourselves would be if extraterrestrials landed and introduced themselves like that.
Yeah,
it's hard to overstate what a big change in thinking that was. But the wild part is that before he created this union between the heavens and the earth, he was obsessed with a particular magical text that a lot of your listeners will have heard of, called the Emerald Tablets of Hermes Trismegistus. which is my something. And he he spent years like making his own translations of it and meditating on it and like doing his own alchemy based on it. This was like in the decade before the Principia Mathematica was published. And what is the first law on the Emerald Tablets? It is as above, so below. It is as within, so without. It is that which is above is like that which is below. And it is this central astrological tenet that provides the engine for what astrology is, and how incredible that he was given this mystical clue that he followed doggedly to find the truth of as above, so below. And this force in the sky is the same force that holds us here, that grounds us. And so I love the ironic symmetry that we got to the thing that quote unquote disproves astrology through astrology. And I think that I think it's a little bit sad that in the process we've lost like the value for those sorts of so-called preposterous intuition-based ways of engaging with the world and finding our place in it.
So what I'm wanting to ask you then is, okay, so you had your reading with me. You hear a lot about astrology now. You're immersed in it pretty much from our relationship. What have you enjoyed about learning more about astrology, and what like are you not into about astrology?
What I've loved about it so far is I just look at like at wild coincidences as kind of like, I don't know, sometimes I think of them as just like hand waves from the universe, like hello, like we still see you. But sometimes it feels like guideposts, like, you know, you're on the right path. And astrology just provides a framework for a deeper level of awareness that allows more of those moments of wonder and coincidence to bubble up. Like I had no idea that that in a weird number of women in my life are Capricorn moons until I met you. Like my ex-wife is a Capricorn moon. My oldest daughter is a Capricorn moon. My youngest daughter is a Capricorn moon. You're a Capricorn moon. Your mom is a Capricorn moon. And then my son is a Capricorn sun.
Yes.
My therapist is a Capricorn sun. Like, and then I have you.
Nothing in Capricorn.
Exactly.
You're here to learn about Capricorn, though, in some way.
Apparently I am. And I don't know what that fucking means, but I love being forced into not knowing. Like into allowing that the world is bigger than I've given it credit for being. Like that's just a feeling that I really enjoy being reminded of, that I can get caught up in smallness and certainty, and then, you know, something like astrology can just give me a almost daily reminder that no, this doesn't make sense, and maybe it's not supposed to, and maybe that's the benefit.
Would you say that knowing me has invited you to go deeper in healing from your, however you would call your experience of growing up with such intense certainty?
Oh yeah, no question. I mean, you know the answer to that question, so thank you for
just sending that over. My favorite, if we don't mind, is the vision of you laying in bed awake, our first night together, terrified that you were sleeping next to a woman who prays to the Egyptian goddess Sekhmet.
Yeah, that was a rough night for me. Yeah, it's wild how much of that belief system that I don't, and it's not that I like have fully rejected that belief system. I like this story of Christ is still like profoundly beautiful to me, and it on a level that feels true, whatever true means, in the sense that the story of Christ resonates with my own personal experience of the divine, whatever the divine presence is. There's just a lot there that I find incredibly moving and profound and helpful. And it's all of the like toxic dogma stuff that I've had to that I've let go of. But what's weird is that letting go of the certainty around anything has made the fear parts more intense when they come back. So like all of those demon stories that I grew up with as a kid, like now that I don't no longer buy this like the certainty of the magic prayer, there can be moments of like late night, 3 a.m. brain spinning where I'm like, how do I know I'm protected from demons? How do I know that this woman I'm in love with hasn't invited dark forces into my apartment? And how do I know that they're not going to get inside of me? Like it's just it's brought up a lot of old stuff that I've had to work to confront, and it's brought up a lot of questions around self-trust. Self-trust is an interesting. It's a very difficult. I don't know if this is. I'm curious whether I know a lot of your listeners and your community have religious trauma that they're actively healing from. It's certainly true for me. I don't know whether having religious trauma is a signifier of having a lifelong self-trust issues then as a result, but it's certainly true in my case. And it partly because I needed a profound self-mistrust to be able to get out of that faith. Like I needed to doubt my own certainty. Like that was the doorway that saved me from a toxic belief system. And so I have a lot of I have a lot of awe and appreciation for the part of me that doubted myself enough to
yes
to get out.
I also wonder if there's, when you're in it, like you have to, I imagine, shut down the channel to your intuition and your body in order to follow the rules and like just to do what you're supposed to do to be saved. And so you just like sever the communication line to, but I want this, or but how could this be bad, or those types of things, because that will put you in a really vulnerable position of being open to demon attachments. Yeah,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, intuition was not a celebrated concept in my childhood at all. It's the word of God. That's how you know what's right and what's wrong, and that's it. Like without that, you're lost. Like I literally was taught, like if this book is wrong, then we are. Paul said we are most pitied, most to be pitied. We are most of all men. We are most to be pitied. He didn't say it about. He said that about if Christ was not raised from the dead, then we are most to be pitied. But the concept applied to the teaching around scripture. That's the only thing we can trust is scripture, not ourselves. So I was taught self-mistrust in that framework, but then it was applying self-mistrust in a broader sense of like, well, why do I have trust in this thing that I've chosen to believe? That got me out of it. Like I had to dive harder into self-mistrust to find an exit. And so that was like not trusting myself was almost, it became a badge of courage and became this thing that I like was proud of and nourished and used as my like, it became synonymous with uncertainty and embracing uncertainty. But then once I started to come back into a mystical, spiritual life, it became really scary to know how to have any kind of judgment between what felt true and what felt
I feel like this
false.
is perfect for exploring your relationship to your intuition. You've shared with me that finding meditation was really powerful for you.
Yeah, very much so. But it also became really scary to me. Like, so I did it for years and like very quickly would get into these really moving, profound, extra-dimensional spaces where I don't even know how to talk about those, but then I started to have these prophetic like visions that would come true, and like and it scared me. Like I was like, I didn't sign up for this. I don't like, what forces are behind, like what am I interacting with in this other plane? Like, is this safe? Am I okay? And I stopped meditating when that started to happen for a long time, because I didn't know how to. It just awakened a lot of those same fear spaces. Then I became like unhealthily obsessed with the story of Abraham and Isaac for a long time, because like that story was about.
Can you tell the story?
Oh God, it wasn't a story. Like I never liked the story when I was in the church world, but it didn't rattle me the way it did once I was out of it. So Abraham wants a son his whole life, doesn't get a son. Finally, when he's really, really old, he has a son, and it's like finally he's here. It's Isaac, and then God asks him to sacrifice him. Like he says, take him up to the top of a mountain and kill him, and as an offering to me. So Abraham takes Isaac up. They go up to the top of this mountain, and he's about to stab him, and God sends an angel to hold his hand at the last second and tells him, no, I didn't mean it. Here, go kill that ram you see there in the thicket instead, and he'll be an offering in the place of your son. And when you're taught this story as a child, nobody like acknowledges the fucking sheer horror and psychological abuse of this scenario. Like, it's just a story about, look how great and faithful Abraham is, that he trusted God and he did this thing, and then it becomes this story that's supposed to be this wonderful prefiguring of God sacrificing his own son for everyone, but no, like, it's fucked up. Like, it's one of the most fucked up stories I've ever heard. And it was especially fucked up to me outside of the faith, and scared me outside of the faith, because I was wrestling with these questions of what do I trust in this spiritual world, and the idea of encountering a voice asking me to like sacrifice one of my children became like horrifying, in the context of, I was taught that this was the true God that asked. Like, if a voice asks me to kill a child, I'm not gonna like There's, I don't want anything to do with that voice, but I still.
So how do you trust if you hear what you hear?
How do you trust anything
how do you
that
trust
you hear?
what you hear?
When Abraham, according to the story, was dealing with, the one true God creator of the universe. And so I don't know. I just went through this long...
Well, especially if there's the one God and then there's demon world.
Yeah. And that's what it was. That's
which one is it?
Yeah. That's what I grew up with, that it's either angels or it's demons. It's either God or the devil. There's no gray area. And I don't know. Who knows what the truth is, but my suspicion is that whatever the spiritual ecology is not nearly as simple as that. There's no more, true good or evil there than there is in, what we experience of each other and humanity. But that's still a conversation I have to have with my inner child at 4 a.m. sometimes when I'm sleeping next to a witch.
So how have wild coincidences helped you to trust in your inner voice, trust in intuition? Where are you in feeling trust in what you hear? I've
grown and healed a whole lot in the time since I've known you, just because I had to. It's the friction of my leftover belief system up against the freedom and wild intuitive openness that you bring to your belief system has kind of forced the issue for me. I can't just push it to the side and pretend it's not an active problem and I don't know. This is all still so new, that language around it. I know that I have healed a lot, and I know that I have a lot of healing left to do. But a lot of it is, a lot of the healing that has happened has come from just recognizing all of the most profound, beautiful moments in my spiritual growth in the last 10 years have been mediated through my own experience and my own intuition, and allowing myself to trust that has clearly led to my own good and my own health and growth, and just stopping to name that and give myself permission to be in charge of my own spiritual terrain has been a nourishing, revolutionary thing. And also to just acknowledge that, to have conversations with old versions of myself along the way, and recognize that there was never anything but intuition, even when I even when I was in that world of certainty. All of the beautiful moments, all of the transcendent things that happened within that framework, and there were many of them, were also mediated through my own judgment and my own intuition, and that was something that, even though it took a long time, I could ultimately trust in to bring me to a healthier, better place. So I don't know.
You've enjoyed learning the tarot.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's been an interesting one too. You gave me a Thoth deck. I've never. The tarot was one of those other scary, evil things.
What do you think's scarier? Astrology or the tarot?
The tarot.
Yes.
Astrology doesn't have like a devil card. At least that I'm aware of yet. The tarot was a very like what was interesting is I had this idea that it was, not safe, and that it was this scary evil thing locked away in an inner child somewhere, but it immediately began working with me in such a kind and like loving and patient and instructive and like funny way. It just seemed to have this like sense of humor and this like I don't know. It's what I've realized about spiritual intuition and trusting myself is that the same part of me that that guides my friendships and like who I'm drawn to and who I stay away from, that has been incredibly reliable for most of my life, is at play in what spiritual systems I trust and am drawn to, and it just I don't know, the tarot approaches me in this way that is very hands-off and confident and assured and non-controlling, and it's like you just take, the wisdom is here when you're ready for it, and no pressure, and I don't know, and then it does it in this like sarcastic, playful.
If your deck were a human, would you be friends with it?
Oh yeah, absolutely I would. No, we'd be super tight. Yeah, it is somebody I'd hang out with for sure.
I do feel the tarot is such a practice space for intuition.
Yeah.
And and like trusting and unfolding things unfolding, right? I now know from you that you've had those tarot experiences of like, you think the card's trying to say one thing, and then time unfolds and it was this other thing, and then when you have that realization, it's like it can bring tears to your eyes because it all comes together, and those things are so powerful.
Yeah, I don't know that I've had nearly as many experiences of like sitting on the floor like laughing and weeping at the same time as I have since you introduced me to the Thoth deck. And then what I was going to say about that too is like Aleister Crowley, who was the creator of that deck with Lady Frida Harris, was this figure of profound evil. Like when we were taught about cults and dangerous belief systems growing up, and all of the dangerous evil things that were out there trying to harm us. Aleister Crowley's name was one of those names that would come up regularly as this sort of symbol of Satanism and evil, and
was a problematic character, like we all are, but
yeah, sure,
he was.
And but to have felt this sort of unconditional nourishment and free and playful love come through this thing that I was taught was sinister has been a good way of beginning to untangle a lot of those issues around self-mistrust. So thank you for that gift, by the way.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I feel it's been a pleasure to witness your process from curiosity to cautious beginnings to just very quickly moving into a confident space of having your own intimacy and not needing to like ask me what I think, because you can trust in your own relationship with the deck, and it's the tarot's so helpful that way.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Never expected I'd be someone who'd say that. So.
Would you recommend it to anyone who is repairing self-trust?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And it's I've been doing it, I don't know, 6 months now, probably. And I still usually just draw a card, like think of a question and draw a single card and get, as a fan of wild coincidence, that like a single card intensifies the coincidence when it happens. There was a week when I kept asking related questions and kept drawing over and over and over again Ace of Wands, and like by the fourth draw I was like just giggling every time it reappeared. Like 1 in 78 times 4, that's a pretty intense coincidence. And but that kind of thing just happens all the time, and just feels like such a beautiful reassurance that that there is an intuitive component that is trustworthy.
Which cards have been most powerful for you in your relationship to trust and intuition?
That's a good question. I'm going to answer intuitively, but I don't know that I'm going to have language to defend them.
That's cool.
The Moon card, I guess, as a symbol of intuition, that one is pretty important. Art. In the Thoth deck, is it always art in other decks?
It's
I don't know.
Temperance in other decks.
Temperance in other decks. Yeah, I don't know any other decks. So, Hermit card. Three of Cups. This week, goodness. Adjustment. What is it? What's that? Justice. Okay. Is that 11?
So in most decks it's 11, but in the Thoth it's 8.
Okay.
Because Lust, which is strength in other decks, and Adjustment, Justice switch in the Thoth.
In the Brady deck, you and I.
Yeah, in the Brady Tarot, Justice is 11.
Is 11.
The
okay.
Vulture
That's
Magic
the
card.
Vulture Magic card. So is there a resonance between adjustment and Thoth and Justice and
yes,
Brady?
and they're both connected to Libra.
Okay.
And the scales.
Okay.
Because you see the gal with
she's
the
the
scales.
goddess is very scale-like. You're right.
She's holding the two orbs in the Thoth.
Yeah, I was.
That's been coming up.
This week.
It was coming up a couple weeks ago for both of us. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. And then this week, I felt like. I don't know. I felt like I was told. Maybe this is your language I'm stealing, but to just embody its energy, like I didn't even go to the guidebook or wasn't trying to understand it. I just was trying to like embrace the intuitive space that the cards seem to suggest, and that's been opening up some pretty profound learnings, intuition learnings this week.
Yay. Yeah, I feel like when you begin to shift into a life that maybe is begins to be guided by your intuition because of like a larger wild coincidence, or like a huge thing like the moon, say, talking to you, that shifting into a tarot practice that's pretty regular, it's like just puts it into kind of hyper speed, because you're inviting this energy of coincidence and the magic of that to just be in like the little micro aspects of your every single day.
For sure.
Well, that feels kind of like a closing. Okay. Is there anything else you want to share about wild coincidence, intuition, repairing self-trust? Is there a story that feels present to share, or?
I mean, wild coincidence, I can riff on that for ages. Let me see if any of those
I could share, since you just brought up Libra on the Bradian, which is the Vulture Magic card, inspiration.
I could tell that whole story.
Like that, our first lunch date.
Yeah.
When we were like, let's get to know each other now. You were telling me about your tattoo.
Yeah.
And
I can tell that story.
Yeah. And so it was like, do you know anything about vultures? And I was like, yeah, I have this thing about vultures.
Yeah, that was, yeah, I think I cried in front of you there.
Yes.
Cried at a casual lunch date. That
Many
happened
tears.
after you had moved up our reading so that you could actively flirt
like,
with me.
This guy, I want to know.
Yeah, so it's the full story starts with the psychedelic experience that I had years ago, which is something I've only done a few times. I think three now. This was the second one, and each one has had a theme, and the theme of this one, like, I kept seeing like a line down the center of my body, and I kept hearing that I had over-identified with my right side and I'd neglected my left side. And I kept looking at my hands, and it was like, I've overused my right hand and I've neglected my left hand. And then it would shift into this masculine, feminine space, and I was like, I've over-identified with the masculine, I've neglected the feminine. I've over-identified with the light, I've neglected the dark. Like, it was a lesson that kept, like, I thought I was done with it, and it kept coming back over and over and over again. And by the end, I was like, okay, I get it. Like, and I just want to be sober again. I'm done. And it was a little uncomfortable the whole time. And I found one place that I was comfortable, which was on my upstairs balcony deck outside in the night. Like, I was just laying on my face on the ground, just letting the wind blow over me, and I laid there long enough, and then I felt this light that wasn't there before, and I was like, oh, the moon must have risen. And I was like, I wonder what phase the moon is at. And I was about to turn to look, and I was like, no, I don't want to see it because it'll ruin it. Like, I just want to picture that it's a perfect quarter moon, like split down the middle, like half light, half dark, because that fits the metaphor perfectly. So I'm just going to imagine that and sit here. So I sat there for like 10 minutes just picturing the moon like this, and finally I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna look. And I turned, and it was as dead down the center quarter moon as it could have possibly been. And I was not somebody that followed moon phases. Like, it just like shocked me. It was this delightful close to this profound but kind of mysterious thing that I didn't understand this lesson. I was like, yeah, okay, yin yang integration, yeah. Like, what do I do with that now? And 2-3 years go by, and my marriage has hit a crisis point, and I went off to spend a weekend journaling and thinking about what I should do, whether I should fight to make my marriage work, or whether I should let it go the way it seemed to be going, which was toward death. And I went out to Dinosaur Valley. I booked a room at this this place called Fossil Rim, and the room wasn't ready, so I went out to the state park.
This is like an hour and a half from Dallas.
Yes.
Glen Rose, Texas.
Exactly. So I go to the state park, and there's a river, the Paluxy, that runs through there with actual dinosaur footprints. There's 2 different species of dinosaurs that came through there, and you can see both of their footprints. And so I'm sitting there, like, I have my journal, I'm thinking, I'm like, I asked myself, why did my subconscious pick this place? And like, as soon as I asked, I had an answer, and it was like, oh my God, I am looking at the scars of something beautiful that have outlived their time. And the earth, the climate changed. It didn't have space for these creatures anymore, and they had to die to make way for something new and something more beautiful. And I just was overwhelmed with the like immediacy of that intuition and the beauty of it. And I sat with it a long time, and then I went to go check in my room at Fossil Rim. And Fossil Rim is this this place that has all of these like herd animals. Like it's sort of one of those drive-through safari parks, but with a legitimate scientific mission, and researchers come from around the world that work there. And so I go sit out and watch these animals come drink at this central watering hole, and I asked myself, okay, is this the same story? Why did my subconscious pick this place to come think about this question of my marriage? And as soon as I asked that, I had an answer, and it was the opposite. It was, oh my God, this is a place that people from around the world come to put the hard work necessary into saving something beautiful that's endangered, and to nurturing back from the brink of extinction herds that might not survive without effort and introspection and hard work. And I was like, oh fuck, this is that split moon thing all over again from my psychedelic experience. This is the light and dark. I'm not going to get an answer here. It's going to be both and as soon as I said that, I looked up in the sky, and the moon was back at a quarter moon, dead down the center, and it was being circled by 12 vultures, like literally 12. I counted them, and one wing of each vulture was in the light as the sun was setting, and the back wing was in shadow. And so it looked like each vulture was its own kind of half moon, half light, half dark, and they would circle the moon, and they'd get to the other side, and the light wing would flip to the dark wing, and it was just this, like, I immediately started weeping, and I didn't know what it meant yet, but I knew that I would have to combine the lessons of that psychedelic experience with the lessons of this dinosaurs and endangered herds experience to get to an answer. And the answer over that weekend became clear, that what I was told in the psychedelic experience, that I'd over-identified with the light, was the truth, and that the consequence of that was that I had neglected the shadow, I'd neglected the hurt that had built up over the 20 years of marriage, and that over-identifying with the light meant that I was only working on the marriage because I wanted to be the kind of person that made his marriage work, and not because I believed in the marriage itself. And integrating light and dark meant honoring the dark and honoring the hurt, and that meant ending the marriage. So, I told you that story, and you I didn't know. Even though there's 12, I have this tattoo. I showed it to you, and it's got all 12 vultures around a split moon, and their wings are in light and shadow, and there's 12 of these vultures. But for some reason, like the number, I think I even told you this, like I thought about hiding the number 11 somewhere in here in this tattoo, and I didn't know why. Like, it just, and then I was like, that's dumb. I don't have a reason for it. But I wanted like clock hands pointing at 11 or something, and then I decided not to do it. And so that was when you brought up the Brady Tarot. Yes, I was just
squealing inside. I couldn't wait to be like, I know. You're not gonna believe this. Like, shh, let him tell a story. Yep.
Which is that the 11th major arcana in the Brady Tarot is.
Yeah, I was like, well,
justice.
I do have something to say about vultures. Would you like to hear about it? And then I shared with you about how I'd come into this framework I call vulture magic, which was inspired by card number 11 in the Brady Tarot, known as Justice, which shows a vulture holding a pair of scales associated with Libra, which is symbolized by scales. It's the only astrological sign whose symbol is a principle and not a being. And one side of the scales is the skull of a vulture, and on the other side is an egg. And it's the middle card in the journey of the major arcana, with the Fool being the traveler.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
So it's the middle point. And that I had come to this feeling from pulling the card in a time when something in my life was dying, that there's some magic in being like a vulture and accepting death and like feasting on it and eating on it, impregnating yourself with that energy so that you can generate new life and seed something to come forward for the future, for your future self, which you can't see yet because you're not at that part of the journey. And as I'm talking about this, your eyes are just totally like huge, welled with tears, like mouths dropping down, like, what? It was so moving to see you so taken by the wild coincidence of me having an answer for you.
Yeah, that was a moment. I just this week I found my notebook from that weekend. And
in Glen Rose.
I hadn't read it since then. That's now been over 2 years, and I wrote about new life from death in there, but I didn't connect it to the vultures. I was talking about the dinosaurs that died to make way for new life for mammals and birds and everything that came later. And I was kind of blown away that I had gotten there without connecting it to
you got to vulture magic.
The symbols.
Yeah, we also had the coincidence of how I went to Glen Rose once at a life-changing moment.
Yeah.
Back in like 2001. So we shared that, which is why we decided to go there after only knowing each other a couple of days. We're like in person a couple of days. Yes. Which viewers can see, it's in Tree of Life, right? Or is that just a river?
I think that was like my Sagittarian. I think I made that up. I don't think it was in Tree of Life. That was mostly Austin Hill Country stuff.
Okay.
But it feels.
I love
right.
that you connected that to Sag A+.
Thanks. I'm learning.
You really are learning.
Yeah. It's such a convenient excuse for my lifelong truth stretching.
I think you were really excited to have an astrological reason for your fibs.
So great to be able to blame unhealthy patterns on the stars. Love that.
Such entertaining fibs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Now do you feel that there is anything else?
It feels like there is, but that seems like
that's for when I welcome you back.
Story arc-wise, that seems like a soft landing.
Well, thank you for joining me and sharing yourself on Moon to Moon.
Thank you for having me on and sharing yourself back.
How do you feel?
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Matt. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for coming on Moon to Moon with me. We forgot to tell a piece of the story that is even more wildly coincidental, and thought of it after we finished recording. And that is that not only did Matt have these wild experiences with a first quarter moon, but once he began to learn about his astrological chart, he discovered that he was born at a first quarter moon. If you can imagine the zodiac in your mind's eye, when you're a Pisces Sun and a Gemini Moon, that means you're born at the first quarter moon. Because the moved has moved 90 degrees from where there was a new moon. So that's pretty amazing. That's really amazing. And even more powerful in terms of the thematics of balance for Matt in this lifetime. He was born on March 20th, which is the day of the spring equinox and the day that the sun moves from Pisces into Aries. And at the spring equinox, as you know, equinox means equal night. So at the equinoxes, we have equal day and equal night. He was born on that day. He was born as the sun was finishing Pisces at 29 degrees and about to move into Aries on the spring equinox. So lots of people born on the same day as him are Aries suns. So that's pretty amazing. That's also amazing. Matt and I love to talk about coincidences. We love to talk about synchronicities and wonder at the irrational and the preposterous. So I hope you enjoyed our conversation where we got to talk about Matt's journey towards embracing that as part of living in uncertainty. One of the things that Matt has really helped me with is understanding how my embrace of no and my trust in no is really one of the most powerful things that I share and that I teach and that I help others come to see in their own lives. And he inspires me with his no, and his no's validate no as a way of being, as a path. And back and forth between us, we love to gaze in amazement at the ways in which honoring one's boundaries and honoring one's no facilitates coincidence. It facilitates yes. As I share often, the no precedes the yes in the sense that we often don't know what we want. We often just know it's not this. We often know in our bodies that we don't want whatever the current situation is. We feel frustrated. We feel stagnant. We feel resentful, jealous. Those are the stirrings of a no. Those are the stirrings of boundaries not declared. And there can be this sense of like, but I can't say no until I know what my yes is, you know? And in Matt's story, in my story, and many stories of those that I witness, we don't need to know exactly what we want. It's okay to not know exactly what you want. It's okay to not have an answer for whatever is going to come. It's about being honest with oneself in, well, I just know it's not this. And we don't need to have reasons or explanations for why. That can be a really intense piece of it, is this feeling like we need to have logic, or we need to be able to explain it to other people. We need to be able to have our no be palatable, digestible, as we announce to other people what our no is. Maybe people who are deeply involved in our no and may be hurt by our no. But honoring that bodily, somatic, intuitive, emergent no shakes things up, creates waves across your life, and allows you to become approachable for the wild yes that's coming your way, the magical coincidences that can come your way from the honoring of the no, the emergent no. And so if you've been listening this far, if you're enjoying Moon to Moon, if you appreciate my voice, if you've taken something else with me, worked with me in some other way, and you appreciate my teachings, I'm inviting you to feel into if you would like deeper support with this, with me, because this is how I help people one-on-one. I help people with this in my community circles, my classes, and I help people with this one-on-one because sometimes what we're going through feels too tender to take to a group space, you know? And I keep finding again and again that there's something about me that helps people feel safe naming what maybe has never been named before. It is such a privilege to be someone who hears for the first time someone's truth begin to move through their throat as they say, I don't want this anymore. I'm not doing this anymore. I don't like this. I just have this feeling like, something's just, you know? And that's the first data point, you know? And we can just be with that data point together. And we move from there, gently, at the pace that is most appropriate and the most nourishing for you. If you're drawn to these stories, if you want to call in all this abundance, so much bounty, so much flourishing magic and fertile creativity, joy, I'm inviting you to think about my one-on-one 6-month container transformation, because it's so potent. I mean, just a couple months in, and most people are already like way deep in enacting and in experiencing the waves and waves of aliveness from participating in your life with such a clear resonance with your truth. If you're craving this, if you're wanting this, it's a big investment. It's a big investment because you're investing in new clothes, right? Investment has to do with clothing money in new form. That's what it is. It's an investment on every level to come into transformation with me. You're clothing yourself in a new form. So working with me is investment. That's what it is. If you just want a chart reading, I'm really not your astrologer. Those who come to work with me are ready. They may be scared, and that's okay. That's okay. We honor the fear. It's walking into the unknown. Not knowing what's after the no. But willing to be able to name it anyway. So if you go to my offerings page at my website, there's a free call, because I don't like to do transformation unless we talk it through and we feel into, is this a resonant fit? So you can book a free call. We'll talk it out. You can share with me what the basics of what's going on. I'll share with you what the process looks like, and we'll feel into whether you feel ready for this investment. The emergent no is some serious life-changing material. And it's my specialty. So thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Once again, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Matt Bull, my treasure, my gift. And reach out if you would like to go into deeper one-on-one work. Appreciating you, sending lots of love. Have a beautiful, beautiful Taurus season.